welcome to the Solid Signal podcast for the week of September 15th, 2014. I just flew back in from Denver and boy are my arms tired. Oh wow, what an old joke, but I still love it. Seriously though, last week was a great week for trade shows. There were two of them back to back, and I went to both of them. The CTIA show, which is the communication industry show that for people who make cell phone accessories, etc., and CEDIA, which is the show for custom integrators, those high-end home theater installers that we all wish that we could afford. It was a lot of fun, and there were a lot of commonalities. There were actually a few vendors who were at both shows, and I did give you full reports at the Solid Signal blog, so I want to talk to you a little bit more philosophically on this week's podcast. If you want to watch or view those reports, just go to blog.solidsignal.com. You may have to go on to page 2 of the articles because they were published last week. Anyway, what I'd like to talk about is a concept called negative space. And I'm not talking about some weird science fiction concept. This is actually a term that I learned back in my days in the printing industry, and it describes a shape that is made up of something outside that shape, but is the same color as the background. What, you say? You say I'm on dope? No, think about it this way. Think about a capital letter A. It's got a triangle in it. You know that there's the bar that goes across and the two bars that are diagonal, and in between those is a triangle. The triangle is the same color as the background. That's what's called negative space. The triangle doesn't really exist. It only exists in negative space because it's formed by the solid things, the positive things that are around it. This is getting pretty heavy for a podcast, and I apologize, but I'm going to explain what this term has to do with both the CTIA show and the CEDIA show, which were both really defined by something that wasn't there. The CTIA show started on Tuesday, which is of course the same day that Apple announced their new iPhones. You would think that a company like Apple would be big at the CTIA show, but they've never really had a presence there. They've always preferred to do their own thing. And while Samsung and several other manufacturers were there, it was the fact that Apple wasn't there, of course, every single year that really defined it. There were plenty of accessory manufacturers ready to bring out their iPhone 6 cases. It's amazing, they just all popped up about 5 minutes after the keynote ended. And even the whole show really just stopped while Apple's keynote was going on. The CTIA keynote emptied out super fast in time for that live stream at 10 o'clock. Matter of fact, there was even a room that was sponsoring it on a big screen. And the show floor itself didn't open till 11 when the live keynote from Apple was about to end. Really, the whole show was defined by what Apple said and what Apple did and the fact that they weren't there. In other words, negative space. As I said, the moment those keynotes ended, manufacturers of cell phone cases and accessories rolled out all the stuff that they already had prepared, and there was quite a bit of groaning and grousing at some of the booths that promised mobile payment solutions for Apple products because Apple announced their own mobile payment solution. These companies will probably be out of business in the next year if they don't find a way to adapt. It's amazing how much influence Apple has over the entire industry, even among people who don't and will never buy their products. They're just the mover and the shaker. Even so, now, after 15 years of being so, and it's impressive. It's impressive that they've had this long a run. Moving on to the CEDIA show, when we talk about negative space, again, the idea is what was missing that really defined the entire thing. In the case of the CEDIA show, what do I mean? If you're into video, well, of course you know you were going to see a lot of 4K televisions. Sony had a huge display, although I swear it looked exactly like the same one that they brought last year. Nonetheless, they were showing a lot of demonstration footage that looked great. But where's the 4K content? Where can you download it? Where can you purchase it? The fact is you can't. And it was the same for audio, too. If there are two words that really describe what was going on in the world of audio, it was Dolby Atmos, which I'm pretty sure Atmos isn't a word, so that's really one word, but that's not the point. Dolby Atmos is the new system that replaces Dolby Digital, and it allows you to actually program an unlimited number of speakers and an unlimited number of channels, and then whatever amplifier you're using simply uses spatializer technology to use the number of speakers you have to try to position all those channels as closely as possible to what the studio wanted. So imagine it goes like this. You take your audio receiver and you tell it exactly where the speakers are in the room, how high, how low, how far, and what kind of speakers they are, if it's a center speaker or a rear speaker or a subwoofer, that sort of thing. Or there's even something called an effect speaker, which is just for special effects, not even for voices and whatever. And it builds kind of a 3D model, and then it uses fancy math to take the 15 or 16 or 112 channels that are on the video and audio source and put them where they need to be. This all works great in theory, but there aren't any sources. There's no downloadable content. There are no Blu-ray discs. There are no DVDs. There's nothing you can use to test this technology. We're putting the cart before the horse here, people. Sure, something has to come first, but you can feel comfortable not buying Atmos technology quite yet unless you're really thinking you're going to keep that audio receiver for a very long time. And you know I've had a very similar point of view on 4K as well. Don't buy 4K until it becomes so cheap that it's the same price as a regular HD set. Then you know what's the problem. Why not do it? But there isn't any content, folks. And that was what was really defining about the Cedia show, is there's all this hardware and there's nothing to do with it. Of course, maybe by next year that'll change, but this year it did make things feel just a tiny bit empty. Why? Those two words again. Negative space. So are you digging this new line that I'm kind of following, where it's a little more philosophical? Or did I just blow your mind and you want me to go back to telling you how to set up your antenna? Leave a comment on YouTube or at blog.solidsignal.com or on Facebook or tweet about it. I want to hear from you guys. You hear from me every week. So now the tables are turned. This is kind of a turning point for the Solid Signal podcast. Does it get more abstract or get more concrete? You make the call.